today's lesson, we're going to write equations given 2 points. In order to write an equation of a line in slope-intercept form, we need to know both the slope, which is usually our letter m, and the y equals mx plus b. And we also need the v, the y-intercept, in order to write that equation. When we don't have one or the other, or maybe we're missing both, we must solve for them. In example number 1, we're missing both because we only have the information to write the equation with these 2 points, -3 and 1, and 4 and -6. I'm going to label them as x1 and y1, x2, y2. There's 2 ways you can find the slope between 2 points. Method number 1 is going to be graphing the points and counting the rise and the run between them. So I'll go ahead and plot the first point, which is going to be at -3, +1. Then I'll go ahead and plot the second point, which is going to be at 4, -6. Counting my rise over run between these 2 points, I go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and I run 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. When I go down 7, remember that is a -7. And then when you run to the right 7, remember that's going to be a +7. We always want to simplify the fraction. And -7 divided by 7 is just a -1 for our slope, which is the letter m. We also can use the slope formula. M equals, I plug in the y2, which I labeled above as -6, and I subtract it by the y1, which is just going to be 1. In the denominator, I subtract x2, which is 4 up above, and I go ahead and have a subtraction of a -3, which is the x1 next to it. 2 negatives next to each other make that a positive. So I now then just combine my terms, then simplify. In the numerator, I have -6 minus 1, which is -7. In the denominator, I have 4 plus 3, which is a +7. -7 divided by 7 is a -1. As you see with either option, either method, I got the same slope. Now that I have that slope, I can go ahead to my step 2, which is solving for the y-intercept, what I'm missing. As a reminder, our slope, was the -1 from the front of our problem. We also need to plug in everything else we know. We know two x and y values, but I'm going to go ahead and select the one highlighted here in orange that I'm highlighting over again. It just has smaller numbers, so that's why I chose to use it. You only choose one point, plug in the x value, which was -3, and the y value, which was 1. Let's double check that from our point. Again, you're plugging in x1, y1 into your equation. We don't know the b's, so we must solve for it and leave it as a variable. Multiplication always first. -1 times -3 is a +3 to combine those like terms there on the right side. To combine my numbers now, I have to go ahead and subtract 3 from each side. What I do to one side, I must do to the other. It's the opposite because I have to move it to the opposite side. 1 minus 3 is -2, and I'm left with b all alone on the right side. We go ahead and circle that answer. That is going to be the b value I place into my final equation. Remember, for your final equation, you only substitute in your b value and the m value we solve for, which is going to be -1. Your final equation is y equals -1x minus 2. The plus minus will really just turn into a minus there. So I can write the final answer as something you might see, x equals -x minus 2. Sometimes you don't need to write that -1 or you won't see it written, but it is there. And plus minus 2 just means subtraction of 2. Example number 2, we want to write the equation of the line that passes through 3, 5 and -1, -7. I'll find slope this time by counting the rise over the run on my graph. And then for the last example, I'll show it with the slope formula. But first and foremost, I need to find the slope, and I'm going to plot these 2 points. 3 comma 5 and -1, -7. I count rise over run, and it doesn't matter which way you go, but I'm going to go ahead and count from my left point to my right point. I go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That was a positive 12 because I went up. Then I'll go ahead to connect to the point, go right 1, 2, 3, 4. Remember, your up is always in the numerator or the down, whichever direction you went, and then the left or the right is always in the denominator. Those are both positives, so it's a positive 12 over positive 4, and always, always simplify it. 12 divided by 4 comes out to 3. If it comes out to a decimal, leave it as a fraction in the simplified form. When it comes out to a whole number, just write that whole number. As a reminder, that's going to be labeled as our slope, which is always the letter M. Remember, slope is attached to the letter M. Now that we have the letter M, we can go to y equals mx plus b as our second step and plug in everything we know. Well, I just found out that the M is going to be 3, and I'm going to go ahead and take my x and y from one of the points. I'm going to choose the first point, x and y, because 3 and 5 don't have negatives on them. You can choose the second point if you want, but that's why I chose the first point there. The x in that case is 3 for that point, and the y in that point is 5. Make sure you choose one point, don't do a mix of the two. From here, I don't know b, so I leave a plus b in order to solve. I combine my like terms on the right side. 3 times 3 comes out to be 9. Plus b, and I bring the 5 and equals sign down. I must go ahead and combine my 5 and 9, but since they're on opposite sides, I have to do the opposite operation. I want to move the 9 away from b because I want b all by itself in order to find out what it truly is. When I do 5 minus 9, I get a -4 for my b value. I'm not done because it asks me in this problem to write the equation. So I need the equation written at the very end of my problem. The equation is always going to be in y equals mx plus b format. The only two letters you erase and replace are your m with what we solved for, which is 3, and you erase and replace your b with what you solved for in the second step, a -4. Final equation reads y equals 3x minus 4. That's the written equation that passes through the 2 points. For example number 3, I have to write the equation of the line that passes through -4, comma 0 and -6, comma 1. I'm not going to use the graph this time. Instead, to find the slope, I'm going to use the slope formula, which is m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. I go ahead and label my points. I have x1 and y1, and then x2 and y2. Again, you could plot them and count the rise over the run, or you could use the slope formula. It's up to you which method you choose, but I'm going to show you the slope formula this time because I did the rise over run in the second example. We go ahead and plug in everything we know. y2 is a 1. My x2 is going to be -6, and that gets subtracted by my x1, which is going to be a -4. Two negatives make that positive, and I go ahead and solve this through. 1 minus 0 is 1, and -6 plus 4 is a -2. My slope is -1/2. That is simplified as it can get. I go ahead now to step number 2, which is plugging in everything I know into y equals mx plus b. I needed to know at least 3 letters, and now after finding my slope, which is my m of -1/2, I have all the letters besides b. For my point, I'm going to go ahead and select the one in orange. That's going to have an x value of -4 and a y value of 0. I just chose that one because it had smaller numbers and it had a 0, which might be really nice for solving. Let's go ahead and solve this by doing the multiplication first. Remember, with a fraction, you can put any whole number over 1 to help multiply the two top numbers and the two bottom numbers to help get rid of that fraction. -1 times -4 is a positive 4, and 2 times 1 is just going to be 2. That leaves me with 0 plus b. From here, it is now, after multiplying that fraction, a division, which is 4 divided by 2 being 2, plus b and 0 gets brought down. In order to get the b all alone, I have to move over the 2 because I'm moving it to the opposite side. I do the opposite of it being a positive 2, which is a negative 2. That cancels out on the right side, and I'm left with 0 minus 2, becoming a negative 2 over here on the left side. That's our b value, and I'm not done because I need to answer with my final equation. The equation, again, is going to be in y equals mx plus b format. I go ahead and erase and replace the only two letters needed, which are going to always be my slope, which we solve for as the -1 over 2, -1/2 in the end. It's okay to attach the negative to the numerator or the denominator, not both, but one or the other is fine. And then the b is going to be what we just solved for, a -2. Final equation answer is y equals -1/2 x minus 2. And here's where I'm getting the m and the b from.